Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear students, I welcome you again in a very important talk today. In our last talk, we talked about the note-taking skills and listening, and I was giving you some rules regarding making effective notes while you were listening to lectures and other talks. So I'll repeat those again, 3 basic rules: that be selective, be brief, and be clear. I mean, these were very important things to remember before you go on and listen. Today I would talk to you about the macr-strategies which are very useful for making effective listening. Now people call them tips also. But as we read the book of Tony Lynch on listening, we'll find that he describes them as macr-strategies for listening. And every successful listener follows these macr-strategies while before he's listening, and while he's listening, and after he's listening. Now these macr-strategies basically are 6. Number 1 is prediction, is predicting about the possible content of the talk or the lecture that's coming. I mean, that comes right in the beginning, that you need to be predictive of what is coming in the talk. Then second is monitoring. Monitoring means, while you're listening to the talk, you need to monitor your own areas, or you need to understand your weaknesses or the problems that you are facing. And then the third one is responding. I mean, while you listen, you need to empathetically put yourself in a situation that how are you going to respond to these questions and the content that is being presented in front of you. So the third macr-strategy, or I would use a simple word for them, that is tips. The third important tip for effective listening and retaining information is just monitoring yourself. So the first tip is, I should say, predicting about the possible content of the lecture. Second one is monitoring the text. The third one is responding to what is going to be played and how are you going to face questions in that. And then the fourth one is clarifying. I mean, while you're listening to the text, you need to have a position where you are good enough to respond to questions. And if you think that, well, there are points that you are in a confusion and you want clarification, so you can ask the question right before the listening takes place. So I mean, this is something that's very, very important, that you need to interact with your teacher if you got any confusions and get the clarification before the actual listening begins. The fifth one is inferencing. Now inferencing is a very important technique, or I should say a tip. Like if it is reading, it is a very important technique. If it is listening, it is an important technique again, or we call it a macr-strategy or strategy or a tip, whatever name you are more comfortable, you can just give it. But the bottom line is that inferencing plays a very important role in making the appropriate or suitable meaning of the text that you are listening to, or you are reading, for example. So we'll now talk about listening only. So while you're listening, you will find on different occasions, different phrases, expressions, and words that are striking, that are fumbling, that are, baffling your attention, that are confusing, that are sometimes even not able to make good meaning of it. So you must have that thinking ability to guess the meaning, to infer the meaning, to just find out some clues in the context. And remember, you have very little time to do it. So I mean, this is something that cannot be learned overnight. This will definitely take months of practice if not years of practice. So you'll have to be, guessing the meaning of the text that you're listening so that you could maintain the mental connection of the talk that is presented in front of you. The last important tip or the macro strategy is self-assessment, self-evaluation. I mean, if you have listened something, it is the talk of a teacher, or it is the talk or the material that is played in front of you as a part of your listening exercises, you need to self-evaluate. How well have you understood the text? Are you completely out of the box? What is your situation? I mean, have you can you answer some questions? Can you make 50% of it? So my dear students, for today I would like you to remember these 6 macro strategies, these 6 tips. I mean, these are very useful before listening, while listening, and after listening it. So, I mean, you must have the ability to predict, you must have the ability to monitor yourself, you must have the ability to respond to the text that is being presented in front of you. Because many a times the teacher sensitizes the text, adapts it, pauses it, and then he asks several questions. So you must be ready to respond to those questions. And then for clarifications, if you need some clarifications, you can ask your teachers for those clarifications. I mean, you do not need to be in the complete dark under the clouds all the times. So, I mean, you need to be very clear about what is going to be played and what is coming next in front of you. And then the 5th one is inferencing, which I said is the most important technique considered in the skill development of any language learner, or in any language skill. Maybe it is reading also, relevant with reading and listening more importantly. Then last one was evaluating. So these 6 key tips or macro strategies are very critical in making you a very good listener and preparing you to be a very good language user at the end of the day. In every setting, I mean, not only in national setting, in local setting, but in international setting. So with that said, I would like you to pay attention to it and read the handouts that I'm downloading for you on the LMS, and then see in the details how these macro strategies are going to be very useful for you. So I hope that you're going to read them and understand them. And then while we'll begin in our next video, pre-listening, while listening and post-listening exercises, you would have already read these handouts and these technical terms and strategies to really take the operational part of listening and then take the maximum benefit out of it. Thank you very much. I hope that this little talk is useful for you and you are going to prepare to come again for pre-listening exercises. Thank you very much.